Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. Today we're going to be working on this Stihl pole saw. Now the complaint from the customer is that it runs just fine, but that the chain will not spin. There's a couple of reasons why that could happen, but let me just show you that it's running. I'm going to start it and show you that the chain is not spinning.
Please subscribe.
So you can see that the chain was not spinning at all. There's a couple of things that can go wrong on these Stihl pole saws. One is the connection at this end between the pole and the power head. It can get reamed out, the plastic can break, and that could need to be replaced. The same thing down here on the lower end. You take that head off there, and where it splines together, the plastic can get all messed up, and it'll be spinning in there, but it won't spin the actual head unit. Now the way to tell that, I'm going to show you. I'm going to go down here by hand and I'm going to pull that chain and spin it, and I'm going to show you where to look. Now what I'm going to do is try to show you. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but in here is there's your metal clutch drum. So when I spin this by hand, I can look from this end and I can see that that metal clutch drum is in fact moving. I hope you can see that. But if you want to know whether the ends of your pole are messed up and you need new fittings on the ends, all you have to do is move that chain and you'll see that drum spinning when you move that chain. And if that's the case, then you know that both ends of your pole are okay and you don't actually have to take it apart just yet. In my case, I'm pretty sure what's happened is the clutch inside of there has rusted itself closed. Moisture in the air, especially here in Florida, will make that clutch just rust in place and it won't move. So we're going to pull this apart. I'm going to start by taking off the power head and see what that clutch looks like. Now using your Torx bits, you're going to see that there's a bunch of screws in the handle. There's two main ones. If you loosen those, this whole thing will loosen up. And then there's one Torx here, which I believe is a T25. And you loosen that up. Don't take it all the way out. And this whole head should just pop right off. And you can take the handle with it. Don't worry about anything coming apart in there. It should all stay exactly where it is. If you just loosened up those two strings, those two screws. And it should be this one and this one right here. So as long as you just loosen it, everything still works. Okay, I'm going to start by taking out these three screws around the housing. Now here's our clutch right here, and we have to get this bolt and this bolt out. I'm going to use an impact because it's easier. If you don't have an impact, you can take out the spark plug. You can stick some rope into the piston to stop it from moving so that you can use your ratchet to go against it. But with impact, it should be pretty easy. Now let's see if it makes a liar out of me. Usually the impact does the work, and you can hold this by hand. Don't cut yourself. There's one, and there's two. So if you ever wondered why you should buy an impact, I use mine every day to work on these machines, and it makes life so much easier. Now when you're taking your clutch off, remember how things go. Look at every plate. You've got a plate, you got a lower plate, you got spacers in here, and you got a clutch portion right here. Now this clutch looks pretty worn. Let me see if I can bring it over to you and show you. You can see that there's worn spots on that clutch. It's not rusted like I expected it to be. Usually what happens is these things are left out in the rain or in the moisture, and the clutch simply will not open anymore. So what I'm gonna do is see if I can make this thing move. Yeah, see, it moves just fine. It's just not engaging. It looks like there's a ton of clutch left over here, not very much left on here, but that thing does look like it'll open the way it's supposed to. So we're gonna have to replace this clutch, which is not a big deal. It's only about 20 bucks. But yeah, I can open that by hand. See, what happens on these centrifugal clutches is this thing spins with the machine, and as it does, these arms fold out in both directions and they grab onto, I don't want to lose my bolts, they grab onto your clutch housing right here and they make this spin, and that in turn makes that shaft inside of there spin. And if you look in there, you'll see that it's a square spline that goes on the square spline at the top of your pole. There's a square spline. If this was not square but rounded off, or inside of our clutch housing was rounded off instead of square, you would want to replace either or, but in this case these are both in good condition. Okay, it's been a couple of days. I put everything back together so I wouldn't lose parts. It's going to take me a second to pull this housing back off. The new clutch came in. This is a 4180A. This one actually called for a different clutch, but when I looked it up and researched it, I cross-referenced it and it was still the 4180A. I believe the part number was 4180-600-2000, but double check that for your machine. I'm going to pull this apart and we'll get the new clutch in. And again, remember, when you pull this off, these things go a certain way. There's an indent here that looks like it faces in towards the clutch. Same thing on this side. So you can see that indent, and both of them face in towards the clutch. So we're just going to take that off. Remember where that goes. We're going to have to pull this off with a screwdriver. There's really nothing to these, so it's not like you're going to be dropping parts on the ground or anything like that, but just be careful when you pull it apart. And remember which way it faces. I don't know if you can see the numbers on that, but any writing on it's going to be facing up, and there's also arrows on it. So I'm going to make sure that the arrows go in the correct direction. That's the writing on top of this one. It's just an arrow, so I know that the writing still goes out away from the motor. So I'm going to take this off. You got these little washers that are bent. So it really doesn't matter which direction you put them on, but put them back on the same way you took them off. Now, this guide part came out one with this and the other one stayed in there. So you gotta leave that one in there, it's fine, but you gotta get this one out because it has to go back in that case so that you can put this thing back together. There we go. So we're just going to put that back on its case like that. We're going to put our washers back on. These washers are concave so that they'll be a little spring loaded when you put them back on. Not a big deal. Now I'm going to put my new clutch back on. Okay, now that you got your plates and your washers back on, I like to feed my bolts in there so that everything stays where it's supposed to stay. Now we're just going to put it back on the machine. Hand tighten everything. Make sure you don't cross thread anything, and to make sure everything stays exactly where it's supposed to stay. Now I always test to make sure that I have movement on the clutch. I just use a screwdriver to do that. Because as this thing spins, it's going to push these wings out. So I just want to make sure that nothing's caught and that everything moves the way it's supposed to. Don't bend anything, but it should move pretty well with a little pressure. Now let's go ahead and put our case back on. And we should be good to go. So I should be able to go ahead and slide this back on the shaft, tighten it down, and we'll give it a test. Tighten down the bolt that holds the motor to the shaft, and it won't spin on you anymore. I'm going to tighten up these bolts right here on my handles and get this thing back in place, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I don't have any trees in my yard, so I had to make one. All that's left now to do is test it. Hi guys, Editing Kelly here. I'm sitting here at my desk editing the video together to be posted for tomorrow, and I realized I don't have an ending. So if you made it this far, you're a legend. Thanks so much for coming by. Thanks for subscribing. Hit the like button. It's somewhere between my chin and my balls, and I'll see you soon.